In an ideal world, prop firms want you to lose because that's how they make most of the money. Now, that's not necessarily breaking news, but I am here to tell you how you can beat prop firms at their own game. So start taking advantage of them. Now, first, who am I to tell you how you can take advantage of prop firms? I'm an ex-prop firm owner. So I used to be affiliated with a prop firm that eventually got acquired by a different prop firm. So I know the ins and outs, I know how it works, I have data supporting everything that I talk about. On top of that, I'm also the founder of PipBack.com, where you get the highest discounts and up to 8% cashback, so you get paid for buying prop firm challenges through PipBack.com. We first need to understand how these prop firms operate before we can understand how we can take advantage of them. Now, by now, it's not breaking news that prop firms make most of their money when you buy a challenge and you lose, so you fail. Now, in some cases, this conflict of interest can actually be so intense where the prop firm is very desperate for you to lose that challenge, where they will then start applying very sneaky tactics in order for you to lose. So for example, I've heard of past cases with different prop firms that are no longer around anymore, where they created a fake market. So they create fake slippage, for example, on your trade, essentially making you lose a whole lot more. Now, don't get me wrong, slippage is very normal. It's very common as well. But this was absurd slippage where no slippage was even expected. Now, not all prop firms are that evil. You have good prop firms as well. And these reliable prop firms, you will find them as well on PipBack.com. And the way these good prop firms operate is through the following. You might be familiar with A booking and B booking. A booking means that when you take a trade with a broker, for example, or in this case, a prop firm, that means they copy the trade that you take. So they take the exact same trade as you. That means you are then on an A-book program. So that actually means when you make money, the prop firm can also make money. And then you also have B-book. And B-book is essentially the opposite. Now, B-book in the usual sense is the following. That when you take a trade and you are on a B-book program, so the prop firm places you there, they take the opposing trade as you. Now, you have to be extremely unprofitable to be on a B-book program. And there's a large misunderstanding when it comes to B-book as well, because most prop firms actually don't take the opposing trade as you. The way most prop firms operate is with a hybrid model. So when you come in and you buy a challenge with that prop firm, you're on a B-book program, but that B-book program is not that they take the opposing trades. It's where you're just on the middle. They don't do anything. They don't take the same trade as you, but they also don't take the opposing trade as you. So when you buy the prop firm challenges and when you're on that B-book, then from there, there's usually two paths that traders take. Either they get banned or they eventually get onto the A-book. Now, before we move on, I need you to understand the following. I'm not here trying to be the white knight and saying that prop firms banning traders is always the right thing to do. Absolutely not. Quite frankly, some cases where traders are getting banned are very sketchy, but a lot of them also aren't sketchy and are actually very logical. I think that prop firm and traders have this love-hate relationship where you don't really like each other, but you do need each other. We live in a day and age where trading has never been this accessible. You can just buy a challenge and you can get payouts from that. If you'd have told a trader that 30 years ago, they would have been like, oh, you're crazy. So it's arguably the easiest time to actually get significant profit from trading. And we can take advantage of that. But in order to do that, I do think we need to find a compromise. We need to find a middle ground. So when you have these two paths that traders usually take, either you go from B-book to then getting banned or from B-book to A-book. We want to go from B-book to A-book. How do we do that? Well, let's first understand why these traders are actually getting banned. The reason, and I'm generalizing my message here because it's not always the case, but the reason why traders usually get banned when they do have a live account eventually and they've passed the challenge is because the prop firm actually can't A-book the trader. So in order to A-book a trader, the first thing that a prop firm needs is simply time. So they need data. And what do they need data of? Well, they need to see, for example, if you are a trending trader and you do very well in trends, yes, but how do you actually perform when there's a consolidation? Now, that doesn't mean that you need to make profit in consolidations. It just means that you should minimize the risk in consolidations. So for example, if you make all the profit in trending conditions, but you lose all of it and even more in consolidations, well, then it's quite hard to A-book you because you can't survive these different conditions. Now, what surviving the different conditions also comes down to a lot is your risk management. So when people come into trading, they usually think, okay, making 100% profit is of course great. Now, usually what a prop firm sees when you make 100% is they're going to ask you, well, how much risk did you take to even get there in the first place? Now, why is that important? is because if you take a lot of risk to get to a lot of profit, then that can also turn around very fast. So you can have a lot of risk and a lot of losses. What that leads to is essentially a very volatile equity curve where you can make a lot of profit, yes, but you can also lose it and double your loss the next day. That makes it very hard to A-book you because there's a lot of risk attached on the prop firm side. So the way I see this is essentially you need to form somewhat of a team with the prop firm, right? So they provide the capital, okay, you provide the profitable trading strategy. Now, whether it's fair that they have a say on how you trade, again, that's up to you to decide. But what I do want to say is you're doing yourself a disservice if you're constantly getting banned by every single prop firm and you have no prop firm to trade with anymore. That's honestly just a shame because you're not taking advantage of arguably the easiest and most accessible time to trade. So when they provide the capital, you provide the profitable strategy, we need to get to somewhat of a middle ground. Okay, they're going to tell us, well, we don't want you to take a whole lot of risk. Okay, what is not a whole lot of risk? And this is, we can move on. How can we now start taking advantage of them? Well, for example, what you can do is start by, first of all, limiting your risk to 1%. And the reason we do that is because we want to give the prop firm 0 reasons to be able to ban us. Essentially trying to build these healthy relationships with prop firms. What we have seen, this is the best way to then consistently get payouts, to start scaling your capital consistently. So what does that mean on the contrary? Well, for example, a lot of banned traders, what they tend to do is they tend to go through the process of passing the challenge. And the way that usually goes is they take a whole lot of risk to get there. So essentially it's a one trade gamble. Either they make it or they don't. If they don't, they buy a new challenge, and so on and so on and so on. So essentially gambling their way to hopefully a payout. Now, what we've seen in the past as well, that they might get the payout and that payout will be rewarded. So then eventually the prop firm is going to ask, well, okay, if you do want to stay with us and you want to keep trading with us, please limit your risk, because otherwise, again, it's very hard to start A-booking you eventually. And what happens then, if you don't limit your risk, well, then eventually they are going to ban you. So when we do find that middle ground right there, then we can start taking advantage of these prop firms. Now, don't get me wrong, because again, there are rotten apples out there and sketchy prop firms where no matter what type of risk management you use, if you are profitable, they are going to look to ban you. That's again why I would highly advise do check out PipBack.com so you can find these reliable prop firms. Now, I need you to understand something as well. So as an ex-prop firm owner right here, I have quite some data supporting the idea of what's the difference between losing and winning traders. So you want to use good risk management, not just for the sake of then potentially not getting banned by a prop firm, but also for your own sake, for your profitability's sake. Because what we saw from our data is that losing traders, breached accounts, struggle with risk management, overtrading and poor execution discipline. So for example, they used to have constant lot sizes, or if you're a futures trader, they used to have constant micro or mini contracts. So the same. So let's say you put 10 micros every single time, no matter how small or large your stop loss is. The same for CFD, Forex traders. They used to always have one lot size, for example, no matter how small or large the stop loss is. Of course, you can see what that leads to. That leads, if your stop loss is a bit smaller than usual and you keep a constant in the amount you risk, whether it's contracts or lot sizes, then what that leads to is that you might take on a whole lot more risk than average. And the next trade, for example, your stop loss might be a little bit bigger, so relatively seen, your risk is actually less. Now, this constant change in how much you are actually risking, so not a dynamic risk, that means that one time you're losing big, one time you're losing smaller. It also means your edge over time actually can't play out because of your risk management. And what we also saw is that losing traders are more involved in direct news trading. Also comes down to risk management. When you have an NFP release, for example, or an FOMC statement, losing traders oftentimes just try to gamble their whole account, trying to guess the right direction of what news is going to do. So once the event happens, exactly sitting there, pressing the button, as soon as it happens, right, they're executing on it. Now, the way this works, and it's quite important to understand, is usually in the challenge stage, prop firms evaluate manually if you have been trading news or not. So sometimes you can get away with it. But again, when it then comes down to the payout stage, etc., they will just simply deny you. And when you are directly involved in news trading, again, once or twice, this can go right for you, yes. But if it goes wrong and that slippage goes against you, you're constantly blowing accounts. So over the long term, what we saw with winning traders, they simply have better risk management. And again, not only to not get banned by prop firms, but to do themselves a favor. So the risk to reward is better. The amount of trades is also better, higher probability. And also when they do trade news, they're already involved in the trade and then news just happened. But the ID was not based on news, if that makes sense. Now, if you're interested in more of the details of the difference between winning traders and losing traders, I would highly advise to watch this video right here. If you're interested in PipBack.com, where we offer the highest discounts and also up to 8% cashback, so that's going to save you a whole lot of money on the long term if you are buying prop firm challenges, then you can go to PipBack and you can find the reliable prop firms right there.